Hi, welcome to One Word a Day. I'm Sophia, pilot into the universe of Chinese. Let's continue our exploration of three-character Chinese expressions. And today we're going to talk about 计划外. Okay, in the outside world, outside of China, I guess all of you have heard of one-child policy, right? One-child policy is called 计划生育. Planned parenting or planned pregnancy. So that's 计划. These two characters. So 计划外. It's again something about planning, but it's why. Why means beyond your plan. It's unplanned. So instead of using a negative, like 不计划, 不计划 means the action of not making the plan. But 计划外 means you already made the plan, but the occurrence of event go beyond your original plan. So that's 计划外. It's corresponding to English unplanned. So unplanned is a negation of plan, right? But it's not a negating the planning action itself. It's negating the content of your plan. It's what's in your plan. So this is outside the scope that you define as your planned, your envisioned future, right? Okay. Let's dissect each character. 计. We have the left side means speaking, the right side means number 10. Speaking comes from this kind of a box or half dome shape thing. That's our mouth symbol. Mouth symbol with kind of up tilted corner of the mouth. And then we have a concave, another concave, and vertical line. That is our Chinese way to indicate from outside. And this vertical line is like a needle, like a puncturing into a new space. And then the second convex shape means is an indicator to mean this new space, this entering into the new space is where we're talking about. So one is pointing toward the mouth, and that means inside the mouth. So it's a Chinese language indirect way to say the tongue inside the mouth, because we cannot visually depict the tongue because it's inside. It's most time invisible, and also it keeps changing its shape, right? So how are you going to capture something that's so fluid? So the way to go about it is to indicate the location of the tongue inside the mouth. Okay, then two horizontal lines, I visualize it as the sound bites traveling through time and space in a diminishing energy look. Okay, so we have the organ to speak and the result, the sound bites produced by speaking. So speaking kind of signifies verbal communication there, right? And then number 10. Number 10 looks like a cross, right? But it has nothing to do with Christianity or crucifixion. Number 10 is simply the vertical line is the rope. And then the horizontal line is like a kind of like an arrow pointing toward a knot in a rope. Because if we physically correct, if we depict the roping in a physical realistic way, that would be a knot, like a tiny little bit of knot on it. So as a language, it would be so easy to miss when to communicate with just a tiny little dot on top of the vertical line, right? So somebody made it obvious by put an indicator over there. So this indicator, even if it looks like a horizontal line, we can visualize it as contemporary, comparable, indicator, that's kind of an arrow pointing. So contemporarily, when we want to draw people's attention to somewhere on the 2D space or even 3D space, right? We would point arrow toward that space. I mean, go this way, or this is look at this, something like that, right? Draw your attention to somewhere. So that's what the language is doing. Put a horizontal line, draw your attention to here. And that means not, or what people call roping technology back then as a permanent record keeping. So 10 is because we have 10 fingers, right? When we start to record keeping, trying to describe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, and then when it gets to 10, you have to restart the cycle to do the finger counting, right? So when it comes to 10, ancient times, people would tie a knot on the rope to kind of permanently record, now it already comes to 10. And then when it starts from 1 again, you can use your hand. Okay, so 10 then becomes a unit, kind of like not the minimum unit, because minimum would be 1, right? Just 1, 2, 3, that's Chinese expression of the first 3 numbers in the language. That's the first, that's a decimal system, that's number 10. And people use that often as a representation of, well, not exactly a number, but as quantification, as here I translate as measurement, measuring as a kind of a quantification of something, right? You try to record in a numerical sense value of something. So when it pairs with speaking, it's almost like ancient times practice of when you're negotiating or saying something, you have both the quantification, like a record keeping to show the number, but you also communicate verbally about how things are going, right? So together, it becomes a contemporary meaning of measuring something. Okay. A lot more complicated, but okay, let me dissect for you. This symbol over here on the left top is the hand symbol. And then it has this 2 horizontal lines below. It's a tool to held in hand to draw. And then the bottom, actually the bottom of the second horizontal line over here is part of this bottom picture frame. Wow, that means picture. So here, visualize it as you're looking at a wall, a space in somebody's room, right? So this would be the ceiling, the top of the wall, and then the 2 sides of the wall. And then you have a bottom, probably means the floor of the wall. And then the middle, just kind of a circle with a cross in the middle. It almost looks like a window, right? But it's a super simplification of a drawing, a drawing. So with some content, right? This cross means some sort of content in there. And then the circle means it has this border line. Like within that border, there's some content on it. And that's a super simplification of type of 2D visual art or calligraphy. And then when you see it's in that space with the drawing, then together this frame means drawing, means some art deco thing in a 2D form on your wall. Okay, so now we have this hand holding a drawing tool, drawing something. So the whole left side means the production of the drawing or the making of the drawing, because it must somebody do this work, right? Now the right side is a knife. So we can see ancient times, the art making process besides drawing, use a brush is to create some artwork, right? So we can visualize the left side as art making, and then the knife side on the right side, which is a visual of here is the knife handle and the two edges of the knife, is used to create this kind of artwork. And that means imagine it's a kind of a wood artwork. You have to carve out the shape, the whole picture in a 2D but a slightly 3D form, right? With indentation, with some ups and downs, not one flat surface anymore. You're going to carve out something. So this kind of wood carving, art making process is captured over here. And eventually this wood carving to make artwork got abstracted into this act of carving. So now we have measure and carving together. That's a Chinese way to say planning. And Chinese have ancient expressions about the act of thinking through, like 未雨绸缪, meaning before it rains, you have already kind of a rain cover ready, kind of a weatherproofing future. So that's a Chinese concept, already have this in preparation or in anticipation of what future is going to bring, especially, the bad weather kind of preparation. But here, this 计划 is more like a contemporary translation, or the Chinese responding to the external influence, outside world's concept about planning. Planning is a series of conscious decision making, right, ahead of time, using known factors, because we are always not going to know 100% of what's going to happen in the future, right? But the big known factors are going to be factored in your plan making. I mean, someone have to come up with this expression to describe this conscious planning process. And the 计 and 划, 计 is measure. So you first have to quantify things before you can manage things, right? So this quantification, this measuring, this roping, record keeping, this bead counting activity have to happen ahead, the first step, and then carve. So it's almost like you have either to carve out resources, carve out time, carve out like people who is going to do what, right? So this art making process of carving, of chipping away to try to make shapes, then that very finite movement then used in this planning process. So this carving, kind of like a budgeting, you can corresponding it at budgeting, or cutting out time, or time planning, right? So measure, step 1. Step 2 is to do something to it, right? So that's 计划. That's Chinese way to say planning. Okay, why? We have this left and right structure. The left structure is the moon. So that simply is a Chinese visualization of how the crescent moon looks. Because, hey, if you see the moon in the sky, majority of the time stay in a crescent shape, right? I forgot the 2 stages. Either it's becoming full circle or it's waning into more like a sliver of that circle. This is the normal state, or the most often frequent high frequency state of the moon. So Chinese capture that as this kind of a wedge in the sky. Okay, the right side looks like a super simplification, almost looks like a half of this roping side. Now look side by side of that. I never see a connection over there. But okay, just like this, I would imagine. So instead of this vertical line, now in this context, must mean a different tool. It's no longer roping. So this vertical line, super straight rope in this context, when the pointer not going through. that must be something else, some other tool. And this horizontal line connect to that, like this whole shape is trying to depict something used in ancient times to try to predict, to forecast, to fortune telling. So fortune telling must be a good business in today as well as in in the past. So people really want to know what's going to happen in the future, right? So it became a profession, and there are specialized tools depicted in this super simplification. So I have to find out exactly how that thing, that tool people use in ancient times to fortune tell, to forecast the future, looks like. I haven't found out yet. But this, once you see this in the language, it means fortune telling. Okay, so the moon fortune telling, according to stories, it goes that for the most of the time, when especially talented or trained people designated by the society to be the fortune teller of the tribe, they normally does their job in daytime. When it's the moon time, they are still fortune telling. That means something is urgent. They have to do overnight fortune telling to respond to urgent situation. And this urgency means something you didn't foresee in your previous fortune telling, right? So you kind of in a quick response, kind of first responder situation, some sort of disaster. So in ancient times, most likely is war times, your enemy attack you overnight or something like that, right? That this fortune teller have to start working overnight in response to that emergency. So then this eventually got deduced or abstracted the meaning to mean outside, means there are some external outside pressure to your tribe that you have to in response to it overnight. Pretty indirect, but that seems to be a reasonable story about what happened in the past, why people use this overnight fortune telling as a symbol to refer, kind of an indirect way to refer to some external or outside concept. And if you notice, 计划外 means beyond or outside your plan, your measuring and carving motion, this combined as the planning, right? So outside planning, if you notice, Chinese put this outside after the subject, instead of using it as it's not an adjective. What's the word for it? Instead of using it like English we would say beyond planning or outside of planning. This outside will be placed in front of planning. But in Chinese, we say planning first and then tell you it's outside of that. Okay, so I guess language learners have to adjust to that way of Chinese expression. So together, it means unplanned. And I came up with this web work of threads with the spool over there. Apparently it's the spool producing all these this web, but visually it looks like something beyond the system. So if the web is what's in your plan, the spool visually stands out as it's unplanned. And indeed, if this is a finished artwork of something, this spool shouldn't be there, right? It doesn't belong there. It looks like a cancer over here. And so I'm using that visually to mean it's something beyond your network of imagining or projection of the future. It's unplanned. 计划外. All right, catching to the tendency of thinking by one word a day with Sophie. See you another day.